Welcome to Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First Investigates. I'm Sierra Cummings, joined now by Andy Parati, one of our investigative reporters. Thanks for being here this afternoon,
Thanks
Andy.
for having me.
This is a really important project that you've been working on for most of this year, right? Taxation through citation.
Yeah, so this story specifically is about this stretch of road in Atlanta. Got a call, got an email actually a few weeks ago where a woman says that she was incorrectly ticketed by one of these speed zone school cameras. And I was like, okay, we get a lot of these, unfortunately. And sure enough, I did some digging, and it turns out not only her, but many others may have been incorrectly ticketed and are now owed refunds.
I love the people in the neighborhood.
Natalie Patterson takes a drive on Metropolitan Parkway in southwest Atlanta, a route she's taken for years.
Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth. Between 6 and 8 times.
This past October, she got a surprise ticket in the mail for $75. It identifies the Atlanta Police Department on the citation, but it came from a private company contracted by Atlanta Public Schools to operate the school zone speed detection cameras, clocking her at 37 miles per hour in a 25 mile per hour speed zone.
These aren't cheap tickets in an already expensive economy.
These warning lights are supposed to alert drivers when the cameras issue citations, but Natalie swears she doesn't remember seeing them flashing. More confusing, the school isn't on the road where the cameras are installed. It's tucked 3 blocks away inside a neighborhood.
When it sent me the thing about the school zone, I didn't even know what school it was about.
You're looking around like where's Waldo for a school?
Atlanta City Council member Antonio Lewis got one of the tickets too.
And so most of our residents who, and myself included, my father and myself included, have both received tickets on Metropolitan, and we're always looking, where's this school?
I'm definitely owed a refund.
Why?
Because the lights weren't flashing.
Turns out Natalie was right. After Atlanta News First Investigates reached out to the police department, city council, the Department of Transportation, it was Atlanta Public Schools with the answers, emailing us to say officials learned on October 23rd the warning lights were not set as scheduled for enforcement timing. In other words, they weren't flashing. And then telling us the city of Atlanta will send a full refund to those identified motorists who were incorrectly ticketed.
It's very affirming. Like, I knew that I wasn't seeing things. I knew that the light was not flashing.
It's unclear how long the cameras were incorrectly ticketing drivers or how many could get refunds, but it could be in the thousands. According to city records, the cameras generated more than $3 million in revenue from September last year to this past October, when the city fixed the warning lights. Natalie says fixing the warning lights and issuing refunds is not enough. The only sign notifying drivers the times when the cameras issue tickets isn't on Metropolitan Parkway, it's here on a neighborhood street.
You'd have to go down the one street, the side street that has the sign that I've never been on and never seen.
Since the state allowed cities to install the cameras about 5 years ago, the numbers have exploded. From 39 permits approved in 2019 to 290 last year. Public records uncovered by Atlanta News First Investigates reveal the cameras have generated more than $100 million in revenue.
I hate it. I hate it. I don't think that the government should be here trying to make a profit off anybody at all.
The tickets are civil penalties. They don't impact drivers' licenses, but if left unpaid, drivers cannot renew their Georgia vehicle registrations. According to the state's Department of Revenue in September, it happened to 133,000 people.
The state legislature has to find a way to fix this as well. The power that they gave to the school boards right here, I think, needs to be checked. Sometimes we throw spaghetti on the wall, and it's not the kind that's going to stick.
While Natalie hopes state lawmakers rein in camera enforcement, she's grateful her ticket isn't sticking.
Atlanta News First really helped. It felt like they were supporting me.
Andy, this is the story that keeps on giving. I'm wondering if people think they're like this person in your story, like, you know what, maybe I have been wrongfully charged. What comes next? What should they do?
Don't stop complaining. I mean, seriously, unless you know exactly how to navigate this system, it's really complex, especially when it deals with these private school zone speed detection cameras. And it's really confusing. You get the ticket, it's got the Atlanta Police Department seal on it, and you reach out to the police department, and they're like, oh, nope, that's not us. And then you reach out to the Department of Transportation because you're thinking, well, it's on this stretcher road, the city's stretcher road, maybe it's them. And then they say, oh, nope, that's not us. Turns out, in this case, it was the only way to get answers for at least us was through the Atlanta Public Schools. And so we reached out to them. It took a few days, but finally got some answers. And then they told us that the city would be issuing tickets. And they, as you just heard and were watching the story, you now know what happened. But the bureaucracy is just incredible. And for someone that has kids, someone that works full time, I mean, we do this for a living. So this is exactly why you should contact us when you have an issue like this. But for the person that is working full time or having kids, I can't imagine how many hours and how do you resolve this thing?
Just a reminder for folks that maybe haven't seen the previous stories or maybe are just learning about these cameras. Give us some perspective here. These cameras are at least they're presented as, okay, we'll put them in these school zones and they're supposed to help deter speeders, ultimately saving lives. What, in effect, at least your investigation, what is it found about these cameras?
That was the pitch in 2018 when the law, when the proposed law, legislation came before lawmakers. They said, hey, we'd like to give the option of municipality schools to implement and put these cameras in school zones because we think this will make schools and children safer. So a number of years goes by, turns out the number of fatalities around school zones or across the state actually, because they don't break it down by school zone, has actually increased since the cameras were installed.
Wow.
It's not broken down by school zone or neighborhood, but just the number of fatalities, pedestrian fatalities, has actually increased, and the number of children, juveniles, has steadily stayed the same, about 11 to 12 a year, and most of those are at night. So for some people, they look at the numbers, more than $100 million generated since the cameras were allowed to be installed. Some people look at this and go, is this really about safety, or is this about creating revenue for municipalities and school districts?
So needless to say, there are a lot of critics about these cameras, one of them being the Atlanta City Councilman. So how did you get him a part of this story? Did you have to convince him, like, hey, this is what we've been working on, or was he seemingly thrilled to do it? I think he's someone who is an advocate for a lot of the voices in our community, and I would imagine he was excited to talk about this.
Yeah, Antonio Lewis is very outspoken on a number of issues.
That's the word I was looking for. He's very outspoken.
And so I reached out to his staff. I actually did not speak to him before we actually did the interview. It was all coordinated through his staff. I tried to reach out to him just to get an idea of what he was planning to say or to give him background information of what the interview was going to be about. But he just showed up kind of ready to roll as I'm explaining what the story is about. And he said, oh, yeah, me and my dad got one of these tickets. He lives in the district where this school zone is. And getting him to say whether or not he agrees with the cameras was very difficult. On one hand, he says he hates them. He hates that they're revenue generators impacting people that can't afford these tickets. And on the other hand, he's like, well, maybe they do keep the community safe. And just to add that, after the story aired, I got a parent drop into my Instagram DMs. And she brought up a good point. She said, hey, the school might be a few blocks away. I'm reading specifically from this message. But children have to cross that busy street to get to their school every single day. So it is an appropriate school zone, although the ticketing was not. This is newsworthy. I just wish the article, my article, made clear that children are crossing every day, and that is why the community fought hard to get these speeding under control in that section. And then I replied,
perspective.
yeah, I mean, it is very important perspective. And then I replied, thanks for your note. You raised good points. The story was not to be an indictment for or against the cameras. I think issues like this happen, issues meaning me doing a story, was due to lack of transparency, the signs obviously being an issue, and the lack of communication with the city. I said if APS, Atlanta Public Schools, or the city would have communicated more, I probably would never have done a story, right? And there's still unanswered questions. We don't know how long those flashing lights were not working. We don't know how many drivers were incorrectly ticketed. And when I tried to get that information, given the city multiple days to respond, I still could not get a clear answer to that. And the reason why is because they don't have it. Wow. They rely on the camera vendor to collect that information, and then they have to go to the camera vendor and say, hey, we're looking for XYZ, and then they have to give it back. So the city doesn't even know often how many people it's ticketed, which is another layer to this story.
Well, you mentioned unanswered questions. So what's the status of those cameras right now? Do we at least know from the vendor that it's been repaired?
Oh, yeah, it's been fixed. It was fixed within just a couple of days after someone complained to APS. APS reached out to the city's Department of Transportation. They fixed it. We just don't know how long they were not working.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is definitely the story and the topic that keeps on giving. But if someone wants to reach out to you with their story or any other story, how do they do that, Andy?
I mean, do what this woman did. Drop in my DMs on Instagram or email me. It's a little bit easier to respond by email. Or all the things. Smoke signal, give me a call. I'm really easy to find online.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to watch this project unfold. I mean, obviously it's frustrating, but you've gotten a lot of action on this topic to the point that we hope to see some conversation next year in the legislative session, right?
Yeah, that's right. So Representative Gullett out of Paulding County, we did an interview with him a couple months ago, and he's interested in tackling this on two fronts. One, the speed detection cameras, because he and lawmakers have received a ton of complaints from their constituents, and also capping the amount of revenue that cities can collect from traffic citations, fines, and forfeitures. So, and after our series has been published, he just text messaged me over the weekend to say, hey, this is getting a lot of traction. I'm getting messages from police officers in other parts of the state that you did not profile, and they want to work together to find a solution to this issue.
Wow, very important reporting. Thanks so much for showcasing it throughout the year for us. You've been watching and listening to Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First Investigates. Be sure to watch, listen, stream wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us.